Hi, welcome to PHP and MySQL video, basic PHP 3. This is a list of suggestions how you can use this video. The notes for this video are in this URL, which is loaded here. And we were doing EG002 basic. The file is already loaded here, and we are halfway through. So the next thing we are going to do is the dates. And again, I'm going to copy what I have, so I don't have to rewrite everything. So PHP is mostly used to build websites. And when people build websites, they need a lot of timestamps to record like the transaction of a business, of a purchase, or when you log in and log out and all that. So there is something called date function. Okay. So what you can do is if you create a variable called date and call a date function to it, interesting things happen. Another way to PHP is a open source language. So it a lot of people write this language, so it allows a wide range of formats. So for example, echo can be written this way or can be written this way. So I'm going to use all these different formats interchangeably. And if you're confused, just check out the PHP menu, okay? All right, so this is an error when you do something like this, because when we write date, they say that you have to give them at least one argument. If you don't give argument, it's not going to work, okay? So if you go to PHP menu and just look at date function, they actually say, hey, you have put in a string of formats, and the format is acceptable by this format. And certain things have certain meanings. For example, capital Y means year. Okay, so if I put Y here, I'm going to get 2005. And if I put some more things like M, which is month, you will get June. And if you put D, which is today's date, which is the 5th. Okay, but it's like, yeah, nobody format the right date this way, so you can put in some separators if you want. Control S to save. And now it looks like a recognizable today's date. Okay. And if you say, I do not like this, I want to show it this way, you can actually put a month in front, slash, day slash, and capital Y, you will get what it looks like here. If you don't like capital Y, you want lowercase y, which means just the short form of a year, 2-digit representation, you can put this as the lowercase y. Okay, so on and so forth. And then we are going to, if you like the British format, British like to put the date in front, month, and year at the back. You have the British format here, which is for June. It's kind of confusing for June 5th. And then If you don't, so it's like, hey, that is so confusing. I don't like it. You can change it to the capital M. Capital M basically means is month in the letters representation. Okay, so you can say, I like month, day, and capital year. It's not so confusing. You can actually get that. Okay. Another thing you can do is actually time, right? So time is actually in this format. So let's say I want time. Okay, let's say I like this format. But I want to add a time at the back. And let's say hour, minute, AM or PM, capital, and then output them. So you have 6 p.m. Obviously, it's only 11 a.m. Why does it show 6 p.m.? Is because we don't know the time zone. So we have to declare a time zone. There is something called, I'm just going to put a code here first, set the time zone. Date default time zone in PHP is a function to set the time zone. So I'm in what time zone is, and list of supported time zones in the United States, and so on and so forth. Okay, and I know I'm Chicago, so we're fine. Save, and now is the correct time. Okay, on the server. All right, that concludes our time. Okay, and we are going to move on quickly to relational operators. Okay, I'm not going to type the code because the video will become too long. Anyway, the code is available here. Okay, the syntax is available here. It's also on the textbook and the menu. So I'm just going to quickly just copy the code from my website. Paste it here. So I'm going to quickly explain this. So if I have two variables, first and second, if first is equal to second, it's going to say first is equal to second, and then first is not equal to second. So the output obviously is first is not equal to second. So this is a simple if-else statement. Is the syntax is the same as JavaScript and same as Java, which is really easy to read. Of course, the relational operators are different because, oh, one more thing, you need two equals to compare equal because one equal sign is not equal, is assignment. So this is a very common error. So to compare equal, you have to use two equals. Okay, so 10 is not equal to that. Another thing we use if-else statement is when we a variable is not declared. Okay, if a variable is not declared, we create a message and say Oops, sorry. When a variable is not declared, we'll first save, Control S to save, and reload here. You say the investment is a required field. So empty will check if the variable is not declared. Okay. And then the next we are going to do is, what if we declare the variable but it's empty? Same, you can use empty to check. You can use the empty function to check, Control S to save. Okay, so whether it's declared or not, they're going to catch it. So if else statement very often is used to do checking if a variable is declared, if the user key in something. Okay. All right, the next thing we are going to do is a for loop. All right, loops, which are called repetition structure. I'm just going to call it loops. So a simple while loop is you declare a counter. I'm just going to say, and then while counter is less than or equal to 6, we can output a counter. And don't forget the closing. Okay, this is an interesting one. You can actually, if you use double quote, you can actually put a variable inside the double quote and they will evaluate the variable, which is very good for lazy people because now they just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But if you put a single quote, they will not evaluate the variable and they are going to output it as a string, which is not, which is kind of weird, right? Because they would not evaluate, say that it's not a variable, it's just a string. I'm just going to output it 6 times. So for lazy people, you can actually put a variable inside a double quote. They are going to evaluate it, and you are going to you can even put bl-n inside. They are going to have lines, right? And you can do calculations like this. But if you want it to evaluate calculation, you cannot put a calculation inside the double quote. You have to break it. And then you can actually force a calculation to happen this way. Okay, and the calculation will be done here. All right. So that's a while loop. While loop evaluate the value before the loop. A do while loop oh, I forgot to echo BR. A do while loop evaluate after. So let's say you do this. If the number is less than or equal to 206, increment the number. You get an output like this. But do while loop is different from while loop in the sense that if you put in too big a number, the loop would always execute once before you get into a check condition. So for this case, if you put 300, 300 will be output once, and then it becomes 301. It's not true, so they will drop out. But it will always be executed once. Okay. Whereas if it's a counter like this, if it's 8 here is not true, it will not be executed at all, because 8 is less than 8 is not less than 6. It will not go into the loop at all. But if for this case, it will go into the loop once, even this is not true because the check is at the back. Okay. All right. That's a simple difference between while loop and do while loop. Okay. All right, the next thing we are going to do is a for loop, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time explaining the for loop, because for those of you who have JavaScript and Java background, for loop is like so easy, right? So I have a loop starting condition, end condition, and +2, you are going to get 1 to 11. Okay, so that's a for loop. And then a double for loop, I'm not going to explain as well, because that was like the standard thing every programming 101 class will teach. So outer loop, the row in the loop, the column, and you get that, which is pretty cool. Okay. But what I'm going to explain is how to convert this and wrap this around a table. Okay. So to do that, I'm going to go outside and write a simple PHP table. You can get a table here. Just write a simple PHP table. HTML table. And I'm going to write a simple HTML table of two rows and maybe 3 columns. So this is one row. Okay. And this is another row. Okay, let me add a bit of BR here. Let me just add another paragraph. So that I have some space below. So at least you can see the code. So this is a table, but this table is not very nicely formatted. So I'm going to write a simple format. Simple CSS here in the head. Table. Heading. TD are going to have, I'm sure everybody knows CSS. 1 pixel solid black. And now the tables will have a border. Okay. Ugly border, but it's fine. So that's a table. Okay. But I want to wrap this double for loop within a table. What I can do is I copy a for loop that works. So we say I want a table in front. And I want a table at the back. Okay, and then I want my for loop, double for loop. And every row, we are going to have TR instead of BR. Okay, so we have our TR here. End of the row, we have our NTR. So that would be repeated every row. And then every column within each row, we are going to have our TD, which, as you can see, the HTML repeats. Okay, I put in the escape character so that the format looks better in the HTML. And now I have my double for loop formatted into a table. If I view source is into this table format. Okay, and I like the format to look better. I can always add my character here. It doesn't affect the output, but just make it look better when you try to debug. Okay, and when you, for the T, if you want to move it, you can use a /T here. So they look better in formatting. Okay, and obviously you shouldn't have a BR here. They already tell me, hey, it doesn't look very good. So let me get rid of the BR here. So this is the output. And that's what it looks like. Okay, and probably I should have a BR here. Okay. All right, so we covered a lot of stuff. We covered loops and how to use loops to generate tables and all the basic PHP that you need for dealing with databases later and all the good stuff. Okay. All right, that's a good place to stop, and we'll be right back. See you soon.